Check out what the satisfied Dan Gemus real estate team clients are saying about working with the Dan Gemus team. Visit dangemus.com.
I got to thank you for being a voice of reason in a sea of insanity.
Now back to the Dan Gemus Real Estate Show on AM 800.
Okay, welcome back to the show. And it's been a pretty crazy week for all of Windsor and Essex County, and quite frankly, the majority of the province, who was also, feeling this rain coming down not only once but twice. And so many people got walloped across the county. It was pretty sad to see, and I've been there myself. I've had that experience. We had a close call. Our sump pump, our backup, we had a water backup, and it was going strong night one. Night two, a piece had broken off the water backup, so it stopped working, and we had to manually start moving water with the kids and the fam at midnight. So, but no damage to our place, thank goodness. We kept up with it. But a lot of people across Windsor Essex County had some major issues. And so to tell us his experience, Chris Gibb from Gibb Insurance Brokers. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Hey, pretty good, Dan. Pretty good. It's always a great day in the insurance business when the sun is shining and the sky is blue and there's no rain or storms in the forecast.
Oh, no kidding. It seems like we're having this conversation every other month. It's crazy, right?
It really is. It really is. The way that the climate has changed over the last 10 years is just it's hitting people hard with in the insurance premiums because it just seems like there's no end in sight of this bad weather.
And that's, as these big events happen, I keep telling Nick, my goodness, how do our insurance rates not go up? How does the insurance company and the insurance industry pay for all these massive damages? It must be millions and millions and millions of dollars every time something happens, right?
Well, yeah, you're exactly right. There was a stat I was reading the other day. About 10 years ago, the average amount of natural disaster claims across Canada would average about $400 million a year. And in the last 5 to 6 years, we've been averaging $2 billion a year.
Oh,
wow.
Oh my goodness.
It's, and you sit there and you listen to the news and you hear that there's, entire towns in British Columbia and northern Canada that are burned out, and 600 out of control wildfires and, wind and water. And I mean, the poor people in Hawaii, there was a town wiped out in a matter of hours. So those are all add up to massive, massive losses for the insurance companies.
We were just talking about this not long ago. Nikki's parents' house, burnt down a couple months ago, as everyone knows on the show listening, and everyone was okay, thank goodness. And the support that came around them after this happened was incredible. So now we talk about, these things happen, like you mentioned, in Hawaii, out west in Canada, and these whole towns are burning. So you can't imagine, when you're one house burning down, everyone rallies around you. But when everyone's homes burn down and everyone's businesses burn down, no one has jobs or homes to go to, it's got to be just devastating. I can't imagine.
I could just imagine how devastating that is to lose just your houses would be horrible, but your entire community goes away is just a devastating feeling.
So listen, I saw some posts on social media I want to bring up with you today, if you have a second for us, Chris. So
sure.
We saw normally rain comes in, and oftentimes a weak point in the home is a sump pump, right? So the sump pumps fail, the power goes out, people don't have backups, water comes up through the sump pump, etc. So the basement floods that way. Yep. But a lot of people this last week had issues with overland flooding, where literally their house is an island, and the water is surrounding the whole house. Does that cause an issue with some coverage?
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does. It's a very technical differentiation. So, in the insurance business, we use sewer backup. That's sort of the quote unquote name for damage from water that comes in up through your sewers, your sump, or your septic system.
Okay.
So if the water enters the home through an aperture or a hole that's supposed to be there, sewer backup coverage would respond. There's an additional coverage that's relatively new, I would say in the last 5 to 7 years, called overland water damage or overland flood. And that would be for damage for water that comes in, say, through a basement window or breaches the foundation
Front
or,
door.
a main floor or a basement door. That's overland flood coverage. So they're two separate coverages.
And so do most people have overland coverage, or would they not? I would think most would opt against it, because who thinks they're going to have...
I would say in the market right now, most people don't have overland flood coverage. Sewer backup coverage in our area is pretty, almost everybody has that. But the overland flood is a little bit of a tougher sell, because it can be, nobody wants to spend more than they have to. But then again, you don't want to be without coverage if you need it.
I could imagine that in the last week, a lot of people are having some issues with that lack of coverage then. There's so many homes that are literally flooded from the yard. The water just came through.
Well, exactly. And sometimes people will have the coverage, but they don't have enough coverage. The general average, I would say, is most people have $30,000 to $40,000 coverage for flooded basements. And when you have 500-600 basements all at once, well, the cost of repairs and the disaster restoration triples. So, all of a sudden you don't have as much coverage as you think.
Man, oh man, that's crazy. I
scary.
know a lot of people who ended up, the restoration companies couldn't even make it out, within days. So they ended up doing their own cleanup and that kind of thing. And so,
yes. And you know what? That's an important point you bring that up. Thank you for mentioning that, Dan. I do want to tell people, if you do any work on your own to mitigate the damage, you should keep track of the time and, take pictures of what you've done and how many hours you've put into it, because sometimes the insurance companies will reimburse you for your own time.
Yeah, they did in our case years ago, about 10, 12 years ago in our basement. It was a big issue where tons of people flooded at once, and we took our carpet out ourselves, and they ended up reimbursing us for the trouble, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, they'll lower your deductible or give you, kind of reimburse you for the time you took.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness. Well, listen, any tips if someone's out there listening and they've had some issues? I guess, what do we do to avoid, the issues as much as possible for future floods? It's going to happen again, obviously.
I think that the biggest thing for people to do is look into adding, sewer backup mitigation efforts. If you don't have a backup sump pump, look into getting one. If you can get a check valve for your sewer that will close if the water starts flowing backwards. And a lot of municipalities, I know Amherstburg has a program, a lot of municipalities will help pay for adding these measures to harden your basement. So that's the number one thing is, if you've invested in finishing your basement, go the extra step and invest in protecting it. The other tip I would say is have a conversation with your insurance professional about how much coverage you have and is it enough if the worst happens.
Jeez. And that's the thing, right? People, oftentimes, the renewal comes up and everyone glances at it, doesn't even look closely, like whatever, how much did my price go up? Oh, great. And they don't look at the details, right? They just look at the price.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And nobody wants to pay more for insurance. And so people often say, whatever it is fine. My house will never burn down. Yeah. My house will never flood. Whatever. It is what it is until it's too late.
Mm-hmm. It'll never flood until it does.
Jeez.
So, Chris, what happens? Somebody makes a claim on their insurance, I don't know, on flooding. What happens when they want to add more insurance or they want to add overland later? Does that cost more because they've already had issues? They've already made a claim?
You know what? It can. Generally, what the insurance companies are looking at is if you've had an issue with a sewer or a flood, their first question is, well, what have you done to prevent it from happening again?
Sure.
So if, you've had a flood and then you've gone to, they've paid to fix it, and next year you want to up your coverage, and you tell them, well, I put in a battery backup and I put in a check valve and I did this and I did that, then they're much more likely to say, okay, we'll look into increasing your coverage because you've done some things to help yourself and to protect yourself.
Oh, that's good.
Now, those this week who've had these issues, who've flooded, Are they to expect their rates to skyrocket on renewal, or
well,
how's that usually?
that's a loaded question because I think the entire eastern half of the country is probably, rates are going up for everyone. Generally people who've had a flood or a sewer backup, it's not that their rates will skyrocket. It just means you're probably going to be stuck with the company you're with for the next 2 or 3 years. Because other insurers might not want to take you on if you've had a recent claim. They want to see what you've done or how how your area has fared as these claims come through. So I wouldn't be as worried about the price increases because it's not a situation where people were negligent. It's more you're going to be stuck with whichever insurance company you're currently with.
So, in other words, next year our prices aren't coming down; they're going to go up. And generally speaking,
Prices for everything is staying up.
Every time you look in the news and you see a natural disaster somewhere in the world, part of what you pay for your insurance is going towards the repairs for that natural disaster. So, no, the short answer is I don't see insurance rates going down anytime soon.
Oh, boy. Well, listen, Chris, always great to have you on. Thank you for the advice. How does the world reach out to Chris Gibb Insurance Brokers if they have any questions?
The world is always invited to call the office at 519-736-8228. You'll talk to Danielle or Emily, who are fantastic, great parts of my team. Or you can just reach us online at gibbinsurance.ca. You can do an online quote. Or if you want to talk to me, reach out to me directly. It's Chris at gibbinsurance.ca.
Chris at gibbinsurance.ca. Thank you, sir. Have a great rest of the weekend.
You guys as well, and stay dry.
You got it. Chris Gibb, owner of Gibb Insurance Brokers. Always great information. And what a busy week he and every other insurance agent has had over the last few days. You got to get through it, right? But yeah, I feel for everybody who's going through some stressful moments in the last week. Hang in there, stay strong, and just be patient. I know it's tough, especially when the insurance adjusters are taking a while and the remediation companies are taking forever. It's tough. Just get through it. That's all we can do. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about some pests that could be living in your garage, and we're going to give away the Richmond Popcorn Company gift card. The keyword today is fresh with your first and last name. Fresh. First and last name to 10800. We'll give that away next. Right after this on the Dan Gemus Real Estate Show.